Hey everyone, welcome to Nespon Solutions' latest webinar. This one in collaboration with Salesforce, specifically to discuss the topic everyone's been talking about, Agentforce. The title of this webinar today is going to be Where Human Experience Meets Strategic Innovation. My name's Jason Carter. I'm the SVP of North American Operations for Nespon. And happy to welcome you today to talk about this and get really a bit more detail as to what Agentforce is and how it can apply meaning and value to your business. One of the things that we've heard, loud and clear over the last couple of months, especially, is that Agentforce isn't just, a chatbot. That's not where we're going when we talk AI, where we talk unlocking value for our clients. Really what we're talking about is improving all aspects of the business with your data and empowering the resources you have to do more, to be more efficient, and to unlock those secrets of your customer, of your operations, to make things happen. Today with us, we're very happy and honored to have Brad Pruner. Brad is the Senior Director of Product Strategy at Salesforce. We've been talking a lot recently about Agentforce and the communications industry and where things are going. Brad, thanks for joining today. Would love if we could get a quick intro from you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Really delighted to join you this morning from Vancouver on the West Coast. And I've spent my entire career in telecom, more on the customer side, and I'm super energized about what's coming with Agentforce. So happy to be here to share some of that.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, kind of as we think about the abilities and capabilities of Agentforce, you'll hear a lot today, especially about the telecommunications industry. As Brad mentioned, he has his history there. I spent over 20 years in telecom before coming over to be a Salesforce partner. It's important to, I think, take a moment and let's look at Nespon as a company as well, right? I mean, we're out here doing great work in our partnership with Salesforce. We were founded back in 2008. We've spent 10 plus years as an official Salesforce partner, helping our clients all over the world, right? North America, Latin America, Europe, Asia, really get the most out of their Salesforce investment. When you look at us today, we have over 350, in-house employee Salesforce consultants that have a cumulative of over 600 certifications. And, we're all very happy and pleased that, especially over the last 6 to 12 months, we've had a real focus in on AI, data cloud, and Agentforce, and understanding, these tools, these products, and how they help customers unlock that value. We do specialize in, these customized B2B and B2C solutions and helping, focus in and driving results with our clients. Those areas of expertise, as I mentioned, not just data cloud and AI, but really when we think telco, we're also thinking communications cloud, sales cloud, service cloud, etc. In terms of our certification areas, we've got industries, right? We talk communications cloud, talk financial cloud, energy cloud, but also, some of the bread and butter products that we see our comms customers have, sales cloud, service cloud, field service, integration layers with MuleSoft, Experience Cloud, things of that nature, all about helping unlock value for our comms customers. Our global offices, Nespon is a global company. We're headquartered outside of Dallas, Texas, with large delivery and sales centers around the globe, including in Latin America with Mexico, in Argentina, in Spain. We've got an office in Dubai, very large presence with a team of wonderful people in Karachi, Pakistan, as well as Hyderabad, India. So that global presence gives us the ability to serve our customers at scale. So for today's agenda, we want to walk through a couple of things that we think would be meaningful for you. We're going to go through and talk a bit more about Agentforce. And you'll hear this through the lens of Salesforce. And we're going to talk a bit more about the nuts and bolts of Agentforce, the real value that it's bringing to the table, what we see it, unlocking for clients. We'll then shift over and show a real world demo using Agentforce for a telecommunications scenario. You'll see that scenario include an SD-WAN product. So, a complex product on the network with both a simple sales use case and a complex sales use case. We'll walk you through that. That demo will be about 7.5 to 8.5 minutes. From there, Brad and I will go into more of a fireside chat, just a conversation about some topics as we weave in ways that Agentforce, Data Cloud, and Salesforce are going to help telecommunications customers, and how we're going to be able to serve those needs rapidly with value and meaning. And then we'll kind of wrap up with a forward-looking roadmap of Agentforce, especially around the telecommunications area. And then, time allowing, we'll have some opportunity for a little Q&A here on the call today. So I hope that gives you a sense of where we're going, what we're going to do. I'm going to turn it over now to Brad just to kind of walk us through a bit more about Agentforce for Comms Cloud.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. Let's dive right in. I'm really excited to share some of the details around what we're seeing with Agentforce in the communications sector. Let's go to the next slide. It wouldn't be a Salesforce presentation if I didn't bring in a forward-looking statement. We will be talking about roadmap today a bit. And so just be aware that when we speak about roadmap, please, of course, always make decisions based upon currently available software. I also want to go to the next slide, start with my gratitude to Nespon, a great partner of ours. We do some great work together. Also, our gratitude to the assembled community here of our customers, partners. I think the thing that makes Salesforce best, and I said at the beginning that, I started as a customer, right? So I've worked in the communications industry for almost 30 years. What attracted me to come join the Salesforce ecosystem now as an employee was my experience being part of that ecosystem, right? Partners, customers, working together to achieve great outcomes is what makes this a great place to be. So thank you to all of you. So let's dive into where we're going and a bit of a history here. So, I think things are moving very quickly, and it feels like, each step we take goes quicker, right? So if I think back to my own history, I used to lead a team at a Canadian telecom, and we were doing transformation, B2B transformation for our value chain. And we were dabbling in chatbots back then, right? We were doing some basic AI, basic chatbots, and we did some good stuff, right? But, the problem that we had was chatbots did not deal with ambiguity very well, right? So when you were building a chatbot flow, you pretty much had to program every step, every possible conceivable outcome in order to get the customer to where they wanted to go. And if we're being really honest, I think the experience there was oftentimes frustrating, both for the developers who had to do these very deterministic paths, but as well for customers who would get frustrated with a chatbot, just really not understanding what they wanted, what context that conversation was happening within. We all got really excited a couple of years ago with the advent of generative AI. And there was an explosion of interest in things like copilots, which really were a game changer insofar as their ability to ingest ambiguity, right? So with a generative AI, you could now use free text and you could say whatever you wanted, and the AI, the copilot, would come back with a response. And it was truly transformative in many ways, and this is still the backbone of what we're doing today. But the problem with the traditional copilot, and the copilot many of our competitors are still using, is they are lacking context. They don't operate in a world that's embedded within a data and metadata framework. And as such, they are prone to bias, they're prone to hallucination, and really weren't able to drive outcomes in a way that was reliable. Agentic AI is really, the next step, and it won't be the last, right? But the next step in our journey towards AI, where we're now building agents which really do two things really well, at least two things really well. One is they understand the context of the ecosystem they're operating within. They understand that data, that metadata. If you say to an agent, I want to create, I have a case, right? An agent already understands the context of that case. They understand the case as an object within the Salesforce data model, and that object may be related to this parent account. Whereas if you say case to a copilot or a chatbot, it thinks about case in a different context and may not be able to get you to the right outcome. So that's really a game changer. The other key thing as a game changer with agents is that they're action oriented. And let's go to the next slide. We'll talk more about what that means. So when we think about Agentforce, we think about it as this new suite of capabilities that operates within the Salesforce ecosystem. Agents inherit the context of the value chain they operate within. So if you think about the full C360 that Salesforce has built, from sales, marketing, to sales, to support, to orders, to fulfillment, that context is the ecosystem that the agent operates within, but it can also now take action in that context. And we'll actually show a demo in a bit here, which Nespon has built, which is really cool, which shows a real world example of what that means. But the other really important thing about agents is they operate within our trust framework. So when I meet with customers, especially early on with co-pilot type models, we heard a lot of concerns from our customers about trust, about, I'm really uncomfortable sharing my data with an AI. I'm really uncomfortable about the risk of my data leaking out. I'm really uncomfortable with the notion that my data may be training someone else's AI. It's a big risk, right? And so with our trust framework, this is central to our business. Salesforce has been in the business of managing customer data for 25 years. We have a fairly good track record of managing permissions, making sure only the right person can see the right data at the right time. This is a very complicated framework which we've built up, which is very effective. Our agents operate within that same framework. So you don't need to worry that billing data you might load into an agent will suddenly be on the public internet, or that confidential customer data, which should only be accessible by one domain within your organization, will suddenly become magically apparent in the AI because it bled through the walls, which is what we've seen with some of the other AI frameworks. So operating within this ecosystem is obviously really important. So let's go to the next slide. So last year, 2024, we announced Agentforce, which again is this new framework, this new really powerful capability. And we also created industry versions of it. So I work in the communications sector. So of course, I'm going to be talking about Agentforce for communications, which takes the best of what we do in the communications sector with the full C360 and with Communications Cloud specifically, and introduces an agentic layer to it. Let's go to the next slide. So for those of you not as familiar, let's maybe take back up a little bit and talk about how it works. If you think about agents, there's really 5 things that agents need to be effective. The first is you need to define their role. So what is the role of the specific task that you're setting out your agent to do? Data is obviously super important, and we want to make sure that we train our agents and we ingest the data we want them to work with. And we'll talk more about data in a minute. Actions is, to me, one of the most powerful things with an agent. Every time I see this, either in demos or with what our own team is building, my eyes light up. The ability to move from insight to action is critical. If you think about the world of kind of predictive models and things we've been doing with data in telecom for 25 years, there's been amazing insights you can derive from telecom data. But the problem is oftentimes it sits in the back shelf. No one can really see that data at the right time as needed. The ability to surface that data and take action against the data is, to me, truly transformative. Guardrails are obviously important. And what I love about Agentforce is you can, in plain English, describe things you don't want it to do. And you can be hyper-specific in that regard. So you can say to the agent, I don't want you to speculate. I don't want you, if you don't know the answer, I don't want you to come up with something, right? We want you to be precise, and that's something you can train the agent to do. And lastly is channel. Channel is important. Channel can be direct, where you're embedding an agent on a website and having a customer interact with that agent. A channel can be assistive, where it's a side panel, where a human agent can interact and support. Channel can also be voice, and that's something that's coming soon, right? Around enabling humans to converse with agents in natural language. Let's go to the next slide. When we look at what Agentforce does and we look at our industry clouds, it really is a force multiplier. So for those of you not familiar with Communications Cloud, which is embedded within the C360 ecosystem, it does a couple of things really well. For one, it includes domain-specific processes and capabilities. So we've built for comms a suite of tools that enable things like quoting and ordering and case management for comms. those become the test bed, if you will, or around which we build agent actions. We also have a communication specific data model, which is our own IP around how we enable the ingestion of comms data within the Salesforce 360 ecosystem. Obviously, agents rely on data, so that's a really powerful force multiplier. And also integrations. So we've built TMF conformant integrations into our ecosystem. All of our customers have multiple back office systems. That's very common. Through our TMF APIs and data cloud, we're able to ingest that data and make it actionable within the C360. That's another very powerful thing. So, these components, and I'm going quickly here, are all things which are pre-built for the communications industry, which can become accelerators to the adoption of Agentforce within any given communication service provider. Let's go to the next slide. We'll talk quickly about data. I think I mentioned comms companies have a lot of data, right, about their customers. We view that the data that's there is a gold mine because it includes interaction and transaction data. But the cool thing through Data Cloud and through API, we can surface that data. We can surface those insights that are derived through either Einstein recommendation engines or other algorithms, surface that data to the desktop so a human can see it and interact with it. But more powerfully, we can then invoke actions against that data. And that's really the part where the rubber hits the road, right? Insight to action. It is the power of the platform. And when we think about agents, let's go to the next slide. We want to think about the whole ecosystem, right? There's use cases across the value chain, from the initial pre-sales and sales part of the process through to quoting and ordering through to day 2 support. So when we think about the role that AI and agents can play in the telecom ecosystem, we're encouraging our partners and our customers to think broad. Like in the past, I think in telecom, we've been very focused on certain key parts of the value chain as being the real friction points, the hardest things to address. But when I think about Agentforce, I think, well, what can you do to help make a seller more effective? What can you do to help make troubleshooting more effective? Opposite ends of the value chain, but potentially very powerful in terms of the impact they can have. So I'm going to come back in a bit and talk about roadmap, but I want to pass it back to Jason to talk through some demos that the Nespon team has built. Back to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Really appreciate that walkthrough. I hope folks are beginning to get a sense here of what Salesforce has created in terms of driving out the value that Brad outlined, right? I mean, we're talking about not only the actions, but the channels that you can act within, the roles, and taking advantage of data that you already have. To that end, let's take a moment and consider the following demo. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is one that's going to take what is probably a pretty traditional case in today's world, right? Where we talk about an SD-WAN sale. You'll probably hear things that are familiar to you if you're in communications related to people's availability, people's knowledge, who's going to help you with a deal, who's going to help build out the locations, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to go through in both B2B cases, a simple but powerful case, and then a more complex case to show some ideas of how using Agentforce could help this particular salesperson. So with that, we'll show you the demo and then we'll be back to chat in a moment.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Agentforce demo. We'll explore how Salesforce and AI work together to close sales faster and more efficiently. Ready? Let's go meet the people in this demo. Sarah.
All right. I'm going to come off mute. I think everybody heard a little reverb there at the beginning as I realized I needed to mute the demo audio. All right. So hopefully, the use cases there resonated a bit with you, and even if an SD-WAN order maybe is not a overly specific use case to your organization, watching, seeing, understanding how Agentforce was helping the salesperson, the process, access the data in that demo. Hopefully that gives you a bit more context and a real world example as to how this could be very effective for you. So now what I think we'd like to do, let's shift from showing slides, right? Let's get out of the world of slideware, and let's engage for a couple of minutes. Being able to have Brad join us today, someone with insight and knowledge of the behind the scenes at Salesforce, knowing Agentforce and understanding it, being part of the strategy, gives us an opportunity to talk a bit more today, and perhaps to not only suss out some of these things that are maybe not as clear, but also highlight the areas that you may not be focusing on just yet, and you maybe should want to. I actually had some pre-scripted questions myself. I know the folks that join webinars like this have some questions that they're interested in making sure get covered. I was going through during the demo and making notes, and one of the things I think that I heard loud and clear and got answered was really around the difference between Agentforce and a traditional chatbot. I think, Brad teed that up nicely. I saw it there at the conclusion of the demo, being able to talk about those areas of what make it unique. Brad, maybe to put a finer point on it, is there anything about the key difference, and maybe we can think specifically about communications, where the traditional chatbot, really, we want to highlight a difference with Agentforce and say, we talked about these domains. Let's really call one of these out that are materially different and impactful for the future of a business. Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I do, and I would maybe leapfrog from chatbot past co-pilots right into what's different with agents, right? And I think for one, the ability to take action is obviously really important, right? But the ability to do so, like what kind of blew my mind, because I see a lot of these demos by our own engineering team early on when these things are being developed. And what really blew my mind is traditionally with a chatbot, there are tools out there, but oftentimes it's code. You're writing like a decision tree, kind of Boolean type logic where you're saying customer says A, then do this, customer says B, then do that. And there's a very complex flow you're building. And honestly, when I first heard about Agentforce, I anticipated that would be behind the screen. It would be the same thing, right? But what blew my mind is when you're building an agent, you're instructing it in plain English, right? You tell an agent what you want it to do, not by code, but by just writing a paragraph to say, agent, your job is to do this. These are the parameters I want you to operate with. And you can just write. I've done it myself. I'm not a developer, but I've built agents, right? And so that to me was a massive paradigm shift, because for one, it makes it quicker to develop, but for two, because of their very design, agents are also better at handling ambiguity, right? So if you put a typo in your prompt, an agent doesn't give you a question mark saying, I don't know what you mean. Odds are it can understand what you meant, because typos are just patterns, right? People make the same typos all the time.
Yeah.
So I think the ability of ability to train an agent in plain English or whatever language, as well as the ability to have an agent understand ambiguity, to me is just game changing, especially when you consider the action framework on top of that.
Yeah, that's a great point to think of, right? When we think of like natural language, right? Being able to bring this, I think it might be, one of these terms that we've heard too many times at this point. But when we've talked for a while about democratizing a lot of aspects of IT, right? This is in some ways democratizing, the speed at which we can innovate. We're using natural language. We're not having to use necessarily certain very specific terms or code or what have you to really at least innovate and try these out, right? Like that seems to be very powerful.
Yeah, and if we kind of think of that kind of scenario in the past, right? And it's funny when I say the past, I'm not talking 10 years ago. I'm talking like 6 months ago.
Right, right.
Pace and change, but when you're actually also deploying an agent, as a user, it's democratized. So more people can be involved in that process. But there's also some really great capabilities around testing agents. Of course, you want to test, right? But when you're working with an agent which is non-deterministic, like where you have different inputs and outputs every time, having the ability to test different scenarios as a user is really important, and that's built into the platform as well. And if you find the agents giving you a response that you don't like, you can, again, in plain English, say, don't do that, right? And then that becomes the guardrails that we talk about, right? So yeah. We see like iterations, the power of this, right? These are not big bang deployments. You launch, deploy, monitor, see what's happening, and then adjust. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a very powerful point, right? Is this time to market and this ability to iterate and use natural language. I'll point out shameless plug on behalf of Salesforce here. Last year they did the world tours for Agentforce, right? I'm sporting one of the hoodies that I got. You go through a series of challenges to understand, and I was able to build a bot in just a couple of minutes as part of an activity using natural language. And it was from scratch inside Salesforce, build it, test it, deploy it, put it in Experience Cloud out, and see the results of it being used. I mean, it's extremely powerful, right? I can't wait to see what people come up with and how creative they get for solving their business challenges with this. So let me kind of springboard off that to something I heard recently, right? And I can't remember which interview it was, but I actually heard Salesforce's CEO, Mark Benioff, and he was talking a bit about the change even in the last couple of weeks with LLMs, and talking about perhaps that there's a future in the near term where models almost become the commodity. But the goal, the customer, the real value to unlock is inside that data. And I know earlier we talked a bit about, the role of data and actionability as we went through the demo and we went through the conversation of Agentforce. And it got me thinking that, a lot of telcos, especially out there, right? They make large investments in data management, data lakes, data sourcing, et cetera. They've made these investments over the last several years. With the advent of Data Cloud and Agentforce, hearing that the models may become the commodity, but the data is what we want to move towards unlocking. What are your thoughts around those investments that have been made and how they serve to help actually springboard this rollout of Agentforce and this use of Agentforce out in comms?
Yeah, this is something that comes up a lot in my meetings with customers. And also something I experienced firsthand in the industry when I was on the other side. Like traditionally, I like to say that telecoms arguably have more data about their customers than any other industry. And I would defend that point, right? If you think about billing data, location data, usage data, it literally is a fire hose of data. And very few industries would have anything comparable. And because of that, telecoms are relatively mature when it comes to data storage. Almost every customer I meet with has data lakes, data houses, data warehouses, data whatever, lots of them, right? And these are investments historically where they're investments driven by the IT team, sometimes the finance team or the architecture team, where they build these monoliths. And it almost feels like they're checking a box to say, do we have our data all in one place, right? And they can say, check, yes, we do. Look, it's there, it's beautiful, right? But when you go down to the business and ask someone in the business, do you have the insights you need to run your business? Usually they say no. So there's this disconnect between what IT is building, and no offense, because I worked in IT as well, what IT is building versus what the business can access. And I think that disconnect is what is at the root of many of the challenges CSPs have on the service side today. The frontline rep doesn't know the customer fully. And so when we think about Agentforce and where we're going with Data Cloud, I think that what I say to customers is those investments are all actually massive assets, right? So that asset we can get to. So it's better you have those warehouses, those data lakes. We can ingest that zero copy with Data Cloud. And what's cool is we don't need to replace that. We can just ingest it and surface it. But the really cool thing is we can now make that data actionable. So if you have an asset database sitting somewhere, or a billing database, or you name it, what good is that doing you in the back office? We can surface it with Data Cloud and actually invoke actions against it. That's the value of the data. That's what the business side wants to see. So to me, these things are entirely complementary. It almost is like a bridge to the future. It doesn't need to replace what's already been built.
No, that's great insight. It's and it resonates. I mean, I spent not only a lot of time in telco, but I was in IT in telco, and getting at the data and being able to do something with the data was a pretty arduous process. And then figuring out how that data was to be actioned by a particular user group, by a particular organization, that was another challenge. And these things extended the cycle that we had to deliver and innovate, and actually hamstrung us in some degrees. So very, very interesting take there that, these investments are absolutely, not something to be thrown away. They are to be leveraged and built upon. These are foundations, to what is being deployed and coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. It was, as you were talking about the bridge to the future, and we're kind of looking forward, I was struck, we've talked a bit about, surfacing data and actions. We've seen some of, where Salesforce is, at least today, their general release schedule. We saw the demo that the Nespon team put together. I'm thinking of other ways, right? That, I was just kind of riffing a moment ago where you're going to see organizations start innovating fast. They're going to iterate. They're going to try things. You're going to see things that work get adopted and tried in other organizations. I was struck in one of our pre-conversations, we were kind of just brainstorming about this idea of how Agentforce could possibly really begin to get leveraged the front end sales cycle when it comes to quoting. And there's this. I personally participated in a couple of projects where we had a homegrown CRM and product catalog. And one of the things about B2B enterprise sales in telco were the complexity of locations, the variability of the products by location, and then the variability of the term that you want to present your customer, right? So you have all these dimensions that you have to go through. And traditionally the salesperson is having to take a lot of time not selling to create these variations. Even if they've got some cloning tools and some copy paste tools, it's taking time out of their day. It's taking days out of their weeks to go and iterate this with a client before they get to the proposal. And so I would be curious your thoughts around, some use case like how quoting or, network monitoring and proactive, alert closures and testing or something. How do you think about those? And is that something that you see that could be taken, action on quickly?
Yeah. Near and dear to my heart, because again, in my former life, I've built many quoting tools, and some were great and some struggled. But it's the thing about the selling process, especially when you move past the opportunity stage into, okay, now I want to get to a quote for the customer. All those pieces of context are critical, right? Like, as you said, service location, availability, all the abilities, all that stuff. And the truth of it is, the ugly truth, and I think we've struggled with it in the industry for years, is salespeople detest those experiences, right? We don't hire sellers to be great at adding things to a cart and navigating attributes on a cart and adding things and configuring. But that's the current paradigm of CPQ. It has been for 20 years, right?
Yep.
And I think that may always be the backbone of it. But what's really exciting to me now is when I see some of the case studies around agentic quoting and agentic ordering.
Mm.
So envision that same future where you're a seller and you're having that conversation about an SD-WAN configuration or a fiber order or even a mobile order. You are capturing data in the conversation. That data is effectively input to what should go in the quote. And we've seen now people building agents which automate that quoting experience, right? Where you're taking all that data and turning it, okay, convert this into a quote, and it will pick the attribute. It'll pick the product, or service location product. It will pick the attributes. It will do the base configuration. Blows my mind. The other thing that's recently blown my mind is using agents to inquire on best solution fit. Again, that's just data, right? So if you look at what we have in the catalog today, the catalog has the products, the offers, the attributes, oftentimes descriptions of the products are in the catalog. We've seen people use agents to build a product expert, query the catalog. I want service at this address. I have 3 young teenagers. Which is the best fiber offer for me? And again, blows my mind. But able to return a reasonably coherent resolution to that question in context of the catalog. So if you can take that product expert query and say, what's the best broadband offer for me that I'm eligible for? And then say, go ahead, create an order for me. We can break the back of that paradigm where sellers don't like working in traditional quoting tools, where we can actually automate some of that. And I really believe the future of CPQ is agentic. The future of quoting and ordering is agentic. You can maybe pick up on the palpable excitement here, but it's really, I think, of all the times to be in this industry, this is it, right? Like these things are all coming together in a very powerful way.
That's awesome. That's exciting, and I still have a lot of friends in telecommunications, in IT. They're still supporting sales, supporting product. These are things that sometimes we talk about still, just a challenge that is still to be overcome. So I think this idea of Agentforce and getting at the data and making it actionable and being able to create and innovate, these are things that hopefully folks that are attending our call today or people that see this webinar in the future, the creativity is fairly limitless, right? I think that you're kind of bound by your ability to be creative and be iterative and to give this a try. And I think as Salesforce, and I'd love, and I want to be respectful of time for everyone, this is probably a good segue to say, if we think about how Salesforce thinks about future roadmap, right? Things from your point of view that we know are roadmap conversations, right? We had our forward-looking statement earlier, but if you could give us any insight into how you see, the future unfolding here in the near term with Agentforce and comms, your take, maybe we can kind of wrap up just the conversation and spend, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. Let's get your take there on the roadmap.
Yeah, right on.
So guys, the team, maybe we can pull up the PowerPoint here.
Yeah, so the roadmap, what I'd say is things are changing rapidly in a very exciting direction, right? So we did kind of a hard pivot about 18 months ago with the advent of generative AI, and we've done yet another hard pivot with the advent of Agentforce, because we really believe the future of the telecom value chain is agentic. And we're not saying that because it looks good on a PowerPoint slide. We're saying that because we've seen it. Right, we've done this in our own labs, and it's very cool, and it's potentially transformative. So a few things in terms of our roadmap. So we are just launching now something we're calling the Billing Inquiry Resolution Agent. And the idea here, we're not a biller, right? But what we can do is we can ingest billing data. And so what the agent is trained to do is to answer questions about that billing data, without having to pivot to a back office systems, and also to resolve things like disputes, right? And that's a great example of where guardrails are important, right? So you can say to an agent, your job is to answer questions about the bill, about usage, about trends in usage, and you're authorized to handle disputes, but here's your guardrails. You're only able to authorize a credit of X or 50% of the total, whatever. But you can build those rules and say even your first offer is X, but if the customer pushes back, you can go to your second offer. These are all things you can train an agent to do, which is really cool. So the Billing Inquiry Resolution Agent is our first communication-specific agent, which is going GA as we speak. We're also working very hard on something we're calling dynamic quoting and ordering, which is what we kind of just talked about, right? So the ability to create a quote or an order in CPQ using agentic prompts and actions. So if I'm having a conversation with a customer and I come to the solution using your SD-WAN example, now having the agentic actions in the library to say, I now want you to create a quote, or I now want you to create an order from the context we've derived from this conversation, is super compelling and powerful. We're very excited about it. That then leads kind of further down the value chain to some other obvious candidates that we're working on, right? Obviously, order inquiry. You know, what the top two the top two call drivers into call centers are typically, why is my bill so high and what's going on with my service order? And if we can identify both of those, we're kind of coming at you know, a lot of the challenge that the call centers face. We're also doing some work with site data. So if you think about a large multi-site customer, let's say a customer has 100 sites, but you want to quote fiber where you can, right? Because fiber may not be available at all the sites, but an agent has that context, right? So if you say for customer ABC, I want to build a fiber quote where it's available, it can actually do that. And that's pretty cool. So that's something else on the roadmap. And the other area and there's much more, but what I'm willing to share today that we're dabbling in is taking usage data, right? So usage data that may come from down the OSS somewhere, and being able to pair that with entitlements and use that as an upsell driver. Something else and that requires some new DMOs within Data Cloud for communication, some new data constructs. But we think there's a powerful upsell engine here where an agent might be able to say, yeah, you're actually exceeding the parameters of your entitlement. Let's upsell you to the right package. What is that package? Well, we've done the analysis. Here's the right package for you. This is all within reach. So I'd say, again, I've been in the comms industry for most of my career, and I'd say this is the most exciting time to be in this industry, bar none. The roadmap is very exciting, very real, and we're very enthusiastic to continue to work with partners like Nespon on the future.
Outstanding. That is exciting, and I, you know, again, I have to say I'm very optimistic about the future here, about the capabilities. I think one of those, you know, holy grail type moments in telco is finally being able to take this data that has lived for, in some cases, you know, 50, 60, 70 years, that have facilities of so many varieties, from ancient copper, you know, to cutting edge satellite and everything in between, taking all of this information and usage and polling and whatever, and being able to do something with it in a way that moves the needle. I mean, it is here. And this is exciting, and it's fun, and it's something that those of us, you know, we really can sink our teeth into and make happen. So just to kind of level set everyone, I'm checking time here. We you know, talked a little longer, and I take responsibility for that in the fireside chat. I'm not sure that we've got a meaningful time frame here for Q&A. What I will commit to do, I'll go through with the team here in the Q&A section afterwards. Anything that we've had submitted, I will make sure we're followed up on. And perhaps, you know, worst case scenario, maybe we're able to schedule a 30-minute follow-up in the near future, and it just be more of a Q&A type session. There's quite a bit of interest there. But what I will say, folks, is, again, you know, we want to thank you for joining. We want to thank Brad Pruner for joining, and Salesforce for, you know, their leadership, for their ability to partner and their willingness, you know, to really help take the partners like Nespon into the future with them. And we couldn't be more excited for that journey together. Brad, thank you so much for joining. We definitely really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Very exciting times. Thanks for your partnership. Thanks, guys.
And for everyone, as we wrap up here, you know, Nespon Solutions as a summit level partner with Salesforce, we're out here to help you, you know, not only implement, you know, these Salesforce solutions inside your unique environment. We're here to help you understand, how can you take advantage of Data Cloud and Agentforce? We've got folks on our team today that have been certified. They've been out doing proof of concepts with other clients of ours. We'd love an opportunity to talk to you and to see how we might be able to fit and help you. Down on the screen, you'll see a QR code. That QR code will take you to one of the Nespon pages related to our practice around Salesforce and Agentforce. Again, love to reach out and have a conversation with you just to see if there's anything there we might be able to help out on. We look forward to everyone joining us in a future webinar session. Thanks everyone for your time. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the globe. And we'll talk to you all very soon. Thanks all.